Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about the Washington Wizards, who've not gotten off to a great start this season. There were a couple of different teams last night that I wanted to take a look at to potentially make a video about. The Wizards were one of them. There's another team later today that we're going to be talking about that's really interesting as well. The other one was the Orlando Magic, and they got absolutely pummeled, so we're going to kind of put a pin in that. We'll kind of check them out later because they got off to a really good start, and then they got absolutely destroyed last night. So still need to kind of evaluate the Magic. But you guys have really been enjoying me just talking about each of these individual teams, really focusing on a few of them a night, gathering some stuff, and then eventually, putting out a video talking about what's kind of going on with them. And that's continuing today talking about the Wizards, who they might just be a bad team. I got excited about the roster construction because I didn't know what John Wall was going to provide them. And I just thought that the addition of Russell Westbrook as a guaranteed all-star level player in place of John Wall, who I didn't think was going to provide them that, made this a playoff team in the East. And I had them as a playoff team. And that's not to say that they still can't make the postseason, but this has been about as bad of a start as you could hope for, as you would think you would see out of Washington this year. So what exactly is going wrong here? Well, it's kind of strange, right? Because if you look at Beal and Westbrook's numbers from a per game standpoint, they're doing like all the things that you would have expected for this Washington team to be successful. They're putting up great numbers from a statistical standpoint. Westbrook's doing the triple-double thing. Beal's scoring the ball really well. And the other guys on the roster, again, from a per game standpoint, are contributing. Even someone like Denny, who's been pretty good as a rookie. All those guys are doing the things you would like. If you looked at these stats at the beginning of the year, you'd think, okay, they're like 3-2. They're doing some things. That just hasn't been the case. So how are they 0-5? Well, they have one of the worst defensive ratings in the league and might be straight up the worst defensive team in the entire league because they haven't exactly played any offensive powerhouses to this point in the season, and their defensive rating is still as low as it is. And when you look at the roster, it kind of makes sense. Like, they don't really have any, high-level defensive players on this roster up and down. I mean, there are some guys that are improving on that end, guys like Thomas Bryant, but they don't really have a wing stopper. They don't really have a guy that's great at rim protection. Neither Beal nor Westbrook are going to be great defensively. They've got so much stuff going on the offensive end, and they're not going to put in that much effort. And that's going to be an issue that's going to be difficult for them to fix and to solve as we get throughout the season here. And one of the other issues here is that the shooting numbers, even as a team, they've been fine, but their biggest name players have just not been shooting the ball well from three. Bradley Beal is down at 21%. We all know that Bradley Beal is much better than a 21% three-point shooter. Westbrook's 26%. That's pretty close to where he should be, honestly. And then Davis Bertans is at 28%. This is the three-point sniper. This is the guy that got $20 million a year to make three-point shots, and he has struggled from behind the arc to begin the season. Now, Beal and Bertans' numbers should turn around at some point. I wouldn't be incredibly concerned about that if I was a Wizards fan. Just in terms of averages, they should start to shoot better from three-point range, and as a result, they should start to win more games. They're not going to win only 10 games this year, specifically because of the shooting. That stuff should even out. And the other thing to talk about here is the Westbrook effect, the Westbrook of all of it. Again, I was excited about this addition because it was just more of a guarantee that Westbrook was going to be a good player this year. And I honestly felt like as good as Beal was last year and as up for grabs as that 7 and 8 spot seemed at the time, all the Wizards needed was a really competent player in the backcourt alongside Bradley Beal that raises their ceiling, and they're a playoff team. And that's exactly what Russell Westbrook provided. Even though I'm not a huge Westbrook fan, that's exactly what he provided, in contrast to someone like John Wall that was certainly a bit more up in the air in terms of what he would or would not be able to contribute for this upcoming season. And that's why the move was made. But the problem is Westbrook just hasn't been good. All around stat-wise, he's averaging a triple-double, and he's averaging 12 assists, 11 boards, almost 20 points. That's awesome. Great. But the turnovers are crazy, crazy high. He's only getting to the line 4 times a game, so the offense has not been incredibly efficient. And he's only won 6 of the last 18 NBA games that he's played in the regular season and the postseason when you go back to his time with the Rockets last year and an 0-5 start of the season this year. I don't know. There's a scenario in which by the end of the season, the Russell Westbrook conversation gets really, really ugly if Washington underperforms and does not make the postseason with him and be on the same team. I'm just saying, there's a scenario in which this ends really, really poorly. The other part of this as well for Washington, and you can't get this from just looking at the stats. I'm sure there's splits and things like that, but from actually watching the games, they have been awful in the fourth quarter of these games. They've had multiple games where they've blown leads late, or they've struggled down the stretch. You saw it just last night. Multiple turnovers down the stretch where they just were not good. They can't hold on to leads. And they're not a very good fourth quarter team. And that's concerning for a team in Washington that the issue for this team was supposed to be depth. You know, they were supposed to have a really good starting group with Beal and Westbrook, complementary guys, Bertans shooting, Bryant being okay. But, you know, the bench was what was supposed to let them down. And when Beal or Westbrook was off the floor, you know, they were going to have to make up for that by being really good when they're on the floor. So when you're struggling this much in the fourth quarter, that calls a lot of that stuff into question. Maybe Beal and Westbrook are still trying to figure out, you know, who's going to be the guy down the stretch, which is one of the most overrated things of all time in the NBA. But that's been an issue as well. And that's going to be something that they're going to have to figure out. And it's not like they've been playing some of the best teams in the league either. I mean, they lost to Philly in game 1. And then they've got 4 combined losses to the Magic, who, yes, are undefeated, but they got pummeled by Philly last night. I'm still in wait and see mode on the Magic. And the Chicago Bulls, who look like a disaster through the first handful of games, have turned it around a little bit lately. But 0-5 is bad in general, but 0-5 when 4-year games are against the Magic and the Bulls, who I did not project as playoff teams before this season, makes it even worse. Now, the question is, will they turn it around? Will they be able to do something this season? Well, it's going to be difficult for them to, you know, turn it around in a significant way because it's at some levels a personnel issue, especially defensively. I don't know who is suddenly going to step up and be a really good defender for this team. Again, when they're giving up a ton of points to teams that aren't really supposed to be that good offensively, that's a problem. I don't really know how they're going to improve on that end of the floor without some personnel changes, and they've already given up a first-round pick to bring in Russell Westbrook. So, you know, where are those personnel changes really going to come from? I'm not sure. You know, the young guys need to be better and hopefully will get better as the season goes on. Guys like Denny, guys like Rui, who hasn't played through the first couple of games, came back last night, looked okay. You know, Thomas Bryant, they've got younger players on this roster that will continue to grow and develop. But they need players like Troy Brown to like step up and be good defenders and be able to knock shots down off the ball. Isaac Bonga needs to be a good defender, be able to knock shots down off the ball. And they just don't have those two-way complementary guys around Russ and Beal right now. And then at certain points, you know, Beal with the shooting and Westbrook with, you know, not getting to the line enough and with the turnovers, those two guys haven't been that good either at certain points. So it's all bad right now for Washington. And in terms of upside for the rest of the year, we'll have to kind of wait and see. And this is especially concerning given the fact that they did give up a future pick to bring in Westbrook and dump John Wall. And, you know, there's a nightmare scenario here that exists for Washington where they're not good this year. They lost a pick. They get to the end of the season. Westbrook is unhappy. We've seen that after just 1 year in Houston. Beal is unhappy because of A, playing with Westbrook, and B, losing, you know, 50 games again for like the 4th straight year. And all those things culminate in a situation where you don't have a future pick. Russell Westbrook's trade value is very limited given his long-term contract. He's unhappy. Beal's unhappy. And you've really put yourself at a disadvantage in terms of building for the future and building a competent roster in the long term just to win like 25 games this year. Like, that is a realistic scenario that could happen for Washington if they don't turn it around. Now, some of these things, as I said earlier, statistically should even out. 3-point shooting for Bertans and Beal. Westbrook should get more comfortable, more acclimated, you would hope, and lower the turnovers and get to the line more. And it is obviously an incredibly small sample size. And maybe the Magic are a playoff team, and they've played, you know, 3 of their 5 games against playoff teams in the Eastern Conference. And Chicago was actually sneaky good, and they turn it around. And we look back later in the year, and they're like, you know, 13-12, and they, you know, they rattle off a couple wins in a row, and the 0-5 start is irrelevant. It's still the Eastern Conference, and that 8th seed is going to be up in the air. But when you're looking at some of the teams that they were going to be competing for that 8th seed or 7th seed with, that have gotten off to really good starts, guys like, or teams like Orlando. I wouldn't have thrown Cleveland in there initially, but I mean, they started the year really well. Atlanta has been really good. Chicago is starting to win a couple of games. They've certainly put themselves at a disadvantage, put themselves in a hole that they're going to have to dig their way out of. So we'll keep an eye on Washington. We'll see what happens for them the rest of the year, but they have a multitude of issues that, you know, it's not like there's a guy that is injured that they're waiting to come back that's going to solve all their problems. This is the roster that they have unless they make a trade, and they've got to figure out a way to be a better basketball team with the players that they have, or make a significant trade to improve this roster. Because right now, it looks like an on-court issue and a personnel issue, which is pretty much worst case scenario for Washington through just 5 games of the season. But that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. I upload twice a day, every day, so it's a great place for consistent NBA content. And you can leave a like rating on the video as well. Helps me out a ton, lets me know that you're enjoying the content, and helps it get out to more people on YouTube as well. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. I hope you have an awesome start to 2021, and I will see you all next time.